Welcome back to my channel. In this episode I'm going to show some footage to showcase the settings that I've made to the camera in the drone or in the software. And what I've done is I've set the white balance to 5600, which seems to be a good setting for outdoor light. And of course the drone is principally, and in my case exclusively, going to be used outdoors. The other setting that I've made is I have reduced the exposure to -3. I've seen that this is a popular adjustment that's made for this camera and for the software, and I've locked those settings in place in the software. So what that means is that the software will not adjust for changing light conditions. It will keep the settings locked at white balance 5600 and the exposure at -3. And where this shows is when I turn the craft to face the sunlight. What you will see is a noticeable darkening of the screen, and of course this has to be borne in mind when filming. Otherwise there is going to be some large jumps in exposure levels. But the benefit of having these settings, from what I've seen so far, is an increased amount of saturation and a greater vibrancy to the picture quality. And on the day that I took this footage, it was quite overcast, but there was sunlight breaking through the clouds, and all of that made for some very dramatic lighting conditions, and the settings really helped to emphasize the colors and the contrasts, as you're going to see. One of the things that cropped up, and actually there are two things that cropped up, one that I've already mentioned on this channel quite a lot so far, and the other which cropped up out of the blue, which I will mention now. When I started filming, I didn't realize that my mobile phone battery was almost exhausted. Now when I plugged it in and did my checks, I did see that the level was quite low, so I switched on the phone charge option that's in the software, and the phone responded to that, so I know that it was working. But towards the end of my flight I suffered complete battery failure on my mobile phone. Now fortunately the drone was within my sight, so I was able to bring it back safely using line of sight. If this had happened when the drone was some distance from me and not clearly visible to me, this could have been potentially disastrous. Now what appears to happen, from what this episode demonstrates to me, is that there is a tipping point on the charge within your mobile phone battery, that once it's tipped, the amount of charge that is provided by the remote controller battery is not sufficient to stop the mobile phone battery dying. Now, what that tipping point is and whether or not the tipping point is dependent upon the quality of your battery, or how old the battery is, and how much or how great its efficiency is at holding a charge, I don't know. I would suspect that those variables will have an effect. But certainly this is something that I think people should be aware of. I've not seen it mentioned in the manual. I've not seen anyone else refer to it in the videos that I've looked at regarding this drone or this software. And perhaps it's a topic for more experienced users or vloggers to look into, and maybe carry out some field tests and do some experiments using the charge feature at various levels of depleted charge within the mobile phone battery. But it's something that I think people ought to be aware of, and certainly from now on I'm going to make sure that I do not go out on any flights without a good charge remaining in my mobile phone. Okay, so and the other point is that once again, the software compass is useless. I've got to say that. I don't think it's just me. I've also done some more searching on YouTube at other users' experience of this compass, and I've come to the conclusion that it is useless for pinpointing the direction of the drone relative to you on the ground, so that if the drone is out of sight and you've lost track of where it is in the air, trying to use the compass, the software compass, to locate it so that you can lock on and get a good signal is practically, if not pointless. And I think this is a big issue, and one that I would be urging DJI to redress immediately, and certainly within the next firmware update. Okay, with that in mind, and on that bombshell, let's look at my latest footage. So, just to remind you, I'd changed the camera settings so that the white balance is fixed at 5600, and I've reduced the exposure to -3, and that's -3 stops, and then I've locked those settings into the camera so that the camera will no longer compensate for changing lighting conditions. And what we're going to see are two things. Firstly, you can see here the color saturation is much more vivid. The settings have brought the scene to life. Now, it was quite a dramatic, the lighting conditions were quite dramatic during this flight. As you can see, overcast sky, clouds but with gaps, lots of blue. The sun was shining through quite nicely. The scene is very well lit, but there's a lot of cloud cover and cloud going across the sky. You'll see the cloud shadows racing across the terrain in various parts of these shots. So you're seeing that, you're seeing the colours pop. I mean, look at that green, it's beautiful, and it contrasts lovely with the blue in the sky, and the grey and in the white, and the brown and the red in the trees, and then the clouds. But the other thing that you will see, the downside of it is, of course, that when I turn into the sun, because the software is not compensating for the increase of the light into the lens, that the parts that are in that are least well lit in the scene will effectively go even darker. So of course that has to be borne in mind when flying with these settings. Basically any movement towards the sun or to a direct light source is going to severely affect the exposure reading, because I'm not allowing the camera to compensate automatically for the fluctuations in light. But the trade-off is the beautiful, vivid nature of the colours that are popping out there. I really like this setting. I'm certainly going to use it again. I have just acquired some ND or neutral density filters, which I will be testing in future flights. I've not been able to get out over the last couple of days because it's been extremely wet here, so I've not been able to get out and test them, but I will be doing that as soon as possible. Here, look, I'm turning into the sun, and you can see the shot darken considerably, and you can see here, because I'm facing towards the sun, the houses in the foreground are considerably darkened in the scene, and then as I move away, the scene lightens right up. Beautiful shot of a rainbow there, lovely shot, and you can see the beautiful red brown in the brickwork on the houses, and the slate grey and the cream white. These colours are really popping out, and you can see the yellow of the construction site machines popping out as well. At this point, incidentally, I'd lost the battery on my mobile phone, so I have no connection of the software, DJI Fly Go software, to the craft. I'm operating this the remote control purely on site here. As I said in my introduction, it's a good thing that I wasn't further away with the drone, because I think I would have been in serious trouble if I wasn't able to keep sight of the drone. So I'm coming in here, and this is the end of the flight, and I'll be testing the camera settings in further episodes, but for now, thank you for watching.